What is your name?
Joshua M. Wiener.
In which city and country are you based?
In Washington, D.C. in the United States.
Okay. And what organization do you work for?
I work for RTI International, which is a large nonprofit research institute. We mostly do contract research for the federal government.
Great. And how would you explain what you do to a layperson?
I do research on aging, disability, and long-term care. I'm the program director for that part of the organization dealing with that, and I have a group of about 25 that do research on those topics.
Great. How would you describe long-term care? What does it mean to you?
Long-term care means services and supports for people with disabilities of any age, including nursing home care, respite care, adult day care, residential care facilities, assisted living, those kinds of services and supports, mostly, although not entirely, non-medical in nature.
Okay. Okay. What would you say are the main 3 policy priorities at present for long-term care in the U.S.?
The 3 main priorities are changing the balance between institutional and non-institutional services in terms of funding, finding ways to improve the quality of care in long-term care, and third, trying to find some way to finance long-term care given the financial crisis and the long-range increase in the need for long-term care services.
Okay. To what extent do you think these priorities have changed in the last 5 to 10 years? Have they changed?
Well, I don't know if they've changed, but there's been a lot more activity on trying to change the balance of the service delivery system. For most of the history of long-term care in the U.S., it was overwhelmingly nursing home care, and that was pretty much it. But since the late 1990s, there's been a very large increase in spending for home and community-based services. And that has been, at the state level and much of the federal level, the primary focus for much of the last 10 or 15 years. Over the last 10 years, there has been a great deal of interest in trying to find better ways to measure quality of care, both on the institutional side and more recently on home and community-based services. And much of this has to do with public reporting so that people will be able to look up on a website and see the quality rating for a particular healthcare provider or a long-term care provider. There's been much less systematic interest in long-term care financing, which really kind of peaked in interest in the late 1980s. But with the financial crisis, Medicaid has come under a lot of pressure, and so states are looking around trying to find some way to reduce expenditures without cutting benefits and just slashing reimbursement rates.
Okay. If you had the opportunity to introduce one new policy reform, what would it be and why?
Well, I've been writing since the mid-1980s about a public long-term care insurance program, which I think, if I had to choose one, would be the one that I would choose. I think it doesn't make sense to provide long-term care on a means-tested basis. We don't do that when it comes to health care, even in the U.S. for older people and some people with disabilities. And it just doesn't make sense to me that the random disability that someone would have would be the thing that would drive them into poverty and force them onto essentially a welfare program. Plus, we have a situation where normally when we think about welfare, we think about a fairly small percentage of the population who needs it and qualifies, but when it comes to long-term care, the vast majority of people end up on Medicaid, which is our welfare program for long-term care. So it seems to me that a public long-term care insurance program where everybody is in the system and everybody helps pay for it is the way we should go. Germany, Japan, the Netherlands have shown that you can have this kind of system and not go financially bankrupt. So that's what I would recommend if I were king of long-term care.
Sounds great. How likely do you think this is to happen?
Very low. In the United States, there has always been a battle between people who have faith in government and people who don't have faith in government, but we now have a larger percentage of people who have no faith in government whatsoever. They, I think, are represented by the Tea Party faction of the Republican Party, and are very much represented by Governor Romney and Representative Ryan, who are running for the Republican, running for president, vice president as the Republicans. So you never can tell what will happen politically in the future, but I would rate the chance of this happening as quite low.
Okay.
Part of the aspect of this is that I had always thought that when the baby boom generation's parents needed long-term care, it would be this combination of the baby boom generation and their parents that would really put long-term care on the political agenda, the financing on the political agenda. While we're here, that's where we are now in history, but it hasn't happened. We've kind of moved up to long-term care being a kind of thing that you talk about at cocktail parties, and asking how your mother's doing is now an acceptable thing to do, but we haven't kind of moved to make it into a policy issue, a political issue.
Interesting. Yeah. In your view, what's the most important piece of evidence that we still haven't done that needs to be addressed in order to make policy changes in the U.S.?
Well, I think there are two. One, for the financing, you would have to demonstrate that you could do this without expenditures skyrocketing. The greatest fear at our Office of Management and Budget, which is like your Department of Treasury, is that you have this kind of program and the costs will explode. The other thing that continues to be a debate in the U.S. is whether you can save substantial amounts of money by reorganizing the delivery system. At the state level, a lot of the expansion of home care is premised on the fact that you can save lots of money by shifting the balance to home care, but those randomized controlled trials that we have, which go back 30 years, say that you can't. But we've learned a lot in 30 years, and we really don't know the answer to that question in the current environment.
Okay. A few quick fire questions. Could you rate these questions on a scale of 1 to 10?
So which is high?
10 is high.
Okay.
What policy priority is allocated to long-term care in the U.S.?
I'm sorry, say that again.
What policy priority
Oh.
is allocated to long-term care in the U.S.?
2.
Okay. How aware is the general public about what the long-term care system offers them and what it could provide to the public?
2.
How well does the system support people with long-term care needs?
5.
And how well does it support their carers?
3.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.